We'll start now. So thank you to the people here, Tushita, in person, coming through the heat to Tushita from where they live. Very kind. And those of you online, also thank you, because so many distractions and other duties we have in life. But you decided to spend some time with us, so thank you for that. I hope the session will be worthwhile. In one way, it can't fail to be worthwhile in terms of the greatness of the text that we're studying. Usually, okay. I'm being offered, given, you see, this text is so virtuous that you start teaching it and people start bringing you offerings. So I have a ragi biscuit, I think, from Deer Park Institute to have with my hot water. Okay, so those of you who attended yesterday's session, we briefly introduced the text. I'm not going to repeat everything, obviously, but we can be happy, I think, very happy, that we will be looking at one of the greatest spiritual texts of the Buddhist tradition, from the great Tibetan saint scholar, Lama Tsongkhapa, who lived from 1357 to, I think, 1419. And he wrote this text or completed it in around 1402. So we're talking more than 600 years ago. And since then, it has been an important treasure of that tradition, which has been the, you could say, a guide for so many practitioners, especially in the Gelugpa school of Tibetan Buddhism. But it has also inspired and interested people from other Tibetan Buddhist schools. And one of the reasons we'll look at it is because it provides so much insight in a step-by-step manner into all of the important teachings of Lord Buddha in a way that we otherwise wouldn't be able to discern for ourselves. Such as the vastness of Buddha's teachings, we need a text like this to be able to navigate in a meaningful way. And as we mentioned, the text is aimed at showing us how there are no contradictions, how the material can appear to us as personal advice, something to be put into practice. This is important. Yeah. So today we'll very briefly look at the topic of relying on the spiritual teacher, but not for long. That is being dealt with by Nico-ji in the morning sessions. And although we'll touch on it, and then we'll look at the meditation session, what Lama Tsongkhapa says about the meditation session. In brief, well, let's see how it goes. There's a lot of material there, and I don't want to do a disservice to the text by just skipping over it. It's important we know what this great master said about how to make our session most meaningful, most powerful. Yeah. And then we might not get to it, but the next topic after that would be the precious human life or precious human rebirth. Yeah. But before we get into any of this, let's again be mindful of our posture and sit quietly for a little while, reflecting on our motivation. The highest motivation is to, recognizing the deep suffering of all sentient beings, to aspire to the state of becoming a fully awakened Buddha in order to release all these pitiful beings from their suffering and to lead them to Buddhahood, guide them to Buddhahood, But that's quite a tall order, you could say. But at least we can moisten our minds a little bit with thinking about how everybody, just like you and me, want happiness and don't want to suffer at all. And how much, they don't know how to achieve that happiness that they wish for. Not only that, how due to ignorance, we keep on engaging in the causes of sorrow, the causes of misery. Yeah. So it's a very, very sad situation. And the other factor, of course, is when we reflect on how much we depend on other people, ever since we were in our mother's womb, then again, we feel this incredible, we can begin to feel a sense of incredible responsibility. Yeah. Responsibility towards others' happiness. May I help them in some way, I'm nothing without them, I wouldn't even have this body without others. So may I be able to help them and at least not harm them in any way through my body, speech, or my mind. So if we can think a little bit like this, it's very useful. And so whatever we study or listen to or discuss today, may it enable us to fulfill this noble intention. Yeah. So just think about that briefly, and then we can sit quietly, observing the breath, natural breath, and being attentive and not allowing thoughts to carry us away, but to keep on coming back to the breath, the sensation of our breath as we breathe in and out. Okay, so we reflect briefly on the motivation, and then we can go seamlessly into the practice of being aware of breath in a very relaxed but attentive way. Especially if we're a beginner, we don't push too hard, don't get tense, let the body be still, and the the body still, the mind relaxed, not tense, but very vigilant, very attentive. So let's sit quietly together for a little while. Let there be a sense of letting go, a sense of, letting go and spaciousness as we breathe out. Almost like a sense of relief. Okay. So, as I mentioned the other day, yesterday, in fact, despite all of the reminders one gives oneself to be slow and attentive about things, a part of the mind always wants to be in a hurry, my mind. And this text, this is just the first volume. There are 3 volumes in this remarkable translation. This text goes into tremendous detail, quite a lot of detail into the path, because it's something very important. You know, I don't know if any of you ever looked at medical treatises. I once had a look at the textbook of one of my cousins who was studying medicine, and it's phenomenal. You know, if you look at pathology and this and that, I mean, it's just thick books on all the kind of diseases you can get in tremendous detail, often with very lurid color photographs and so forth. Anyway, there's no photographs in this book. It's not sort of that kind of book, and it's certainly not meant to be entertaining. But as I said the other day, it's very inspiring, just especially if one reads it as an Indian citizen, the tremendous reliance Tsongkhapa puts on the Indian Buddhist tradition and the quotes. So let's look a little bit on the relying on the teacher chapter, which we could spend, of course, a lot of time on. And perhaps we'll do it like this, that each session that we have, we won't just focus on one topic, but we can also do a little bit sometimes on one of the topics and then spend more time on another topic. Something like that could be possible, although maybe not totally traditional. Because also I don't want people to get very bored, you know. like that. Okay, so Tsongkhapa is very, very thorough. This section in general he calls how to lead students with the actual instructions of this book. So that would be, first you have to rely on the teacher, whom Tsongkhapa refers to as the root of the path. वो धर्म के मार्ग का जड़ जो है वो गुरु है. Traditionally this was taught first, this topic. Often in the West this has not been taught first because of problems Westerners have had about, gurus and guru devotion. It doesn't fit very well. Often it's better to start with something more psychological, like, nature of mind and so forth. But anyway, Tsongkhapa is very clear. The teacher is the root of the path. So we might like to investigate a little bit why that might be so. In general, and I'm not quoting Tsongkhapa here, I have to say, but in general, we could say that the guru, the teacher, is a reflection or helps us, as a mirror, to get in touch with our own inner guru. And the inner guru is what? None other than the Buddha nature, Dharmakaya, Buddha nature, the various terms one could use. But let's say the guru, whom some teachers even say has never been separate from us in that sense, because the inner guru has always been there, just not acknowledged. So the outer guru, flesh and blood guru, is someone who is qualified. The qualified person helps us get in touch with that original basic goodness, the awakened quality within our own mind. How they do it is by instructing us, and if they are really skillful guru, not just instructing us with the teachings, of course, but also with their example and what they get us to do and how they relate with us. They act. One modern teacher, Pema Chodron, an American nun, she put it this way, and I think it's again useful. The job of the authentic guru is to insult us. This doesn't mean to insult us in an ordinary way, like, bad-mannered people might insult us, or on some, radio show, TV show, not like that. But the guru's job, knowing that we are suffering due to ignorance, due to self-grasping, self-cherishing, all of those, the 8 worldly feelings, all those things, the guru's job is to dismantle that. The guru's job is to make the so-called ego mind very uncomfortable. Because if all the guru is doing is making us feel very comfortable, that's not going to help us develop the renunciation, the sadness, the utter sense of the futility of samsara, which is what we need to actually progress properly on the path. If we feel everything is okay, and, I'm basically fine, there's no problem at all, and the guru is like a good friend who, smiles at me and makes me happy and even gives me jobs that I like, then that wouldn't be an authentic guru. They would not be dislodging our self-cherishing attitude. So the guru is really there to test us, but of course, with incredible compassion in the background. They care for us so much, but that's why they want to really, make sure we begin to, dismantle the rigidity and the self-cherishing, the self-centeredness that we were so much caught up in. So this text gives a lot of information on the qualifications of a guru, and this is where it becomes very, very painful and embarrassing for people like me to read these things, because I realize I don't have any of these qualifications. The only qualification I have is that I've heard these teachings from authentic gurus, and that does count for something in this tradition, to have the oral transmission of the teaching. It's not just that I've read these things myself. I've heard these teachings many times from great gurus like His Holiness, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, like Choden Rinpoche, so many great lamas have expounded on the Lamrim, and I've listened to most of the Lamrim teachings from such lamas. So that means there is some, qualification I have. But in other ways, I don't have any of the qualifications, For example, Mahayana teacher should be disciplined, serene, thoroughly pacified. Good qualities should surpass those of the students, should be energetic, has a wealth of scriptural knowledge, possess loving concern, thorough knowledge of reality, skill in instructing disciples, has abandoned becoming dispirited. I don't have any of these qualities. I'm sorry, So I know that may be disappointing for you, but I don't feel I have any of these qualities in sufficient measure. So what I'm doing is I'm just acting as a loudspeaker, but loudspeakers are useful. Yeah. And I do have faith in these teachings. This I have to say. I do have faith in these teachings. And when I have practiced them to a slight degree, there has been benefit to my mind. So in that sense, and I can say I have a reasonably good motivation in sitting here higher than you and expounding this stuff, okay? Because you see, and this is the degenerate era, I'm afraid. The problem with this era is that those who have not disciplined themselves have no basis for disciplining others. So you see, it's better to be thoroughly disciplined oneself. And, those who have seen me recently at a party for one of our friends know that I'm not totally disciplined enough, Of course, I'm not totally undisciplined, but I'm also not totally disciplined. So ideally, a teacher of such a text would be a monk or nun, and someone who is abiding in those vows. That would be best. Or a yogi, a yogini, someone who has already penetrated reality in meditation. That would be best. But having said that, still I think it's okay. I am allowed to teach these things by my gurus. So that means, I have a certificate from FPMT. So, theek hai, chalega. But you must never, if you can, forsake opportunities to hear these kind of teachings from authentic people. Dalai Lama ji, so many great teachers, Geshe Dorje Damdol in Delhi, so many people you should hear such teachings from. That will bring more benefit to your mind because they are realized people. Okay. So all these qualities are given of the teacher. Now, what are the defining characteristics of a student who relies upon the teacher? This is also important. You're expecting the teacher to be so great and so forth. That's good. Of course, they should be. There's some minimum qualities the student should have, I don't know if you got around to these teachings, Nikoji, in this chapter. Did you also talk about this? So just to remind you, and those who are hearing this the first time, students should have basically, according to Arya Deva, a very great disciple of the great Nagarjuna. Arya Deva said that a student should have at least three qualities: non-partisan, intelligent, and diligent. So non-partisan means shouldn't already come to the teachings with a biased attitude, or thinking that they know better and they're just there to contradict what the teacher is saying, or try and show the teacher is wrong, or having a whole bunch of views in their head which are making them already biased, not open to what is often totally new material. So we should be unbiased, intelligent. I think that's pretty obvious. Of course, some people, due to karmic obscuration, we might say, just don't have. They might be very intelligent or worldly wise, perhaps, in some ways, but they may not have the intelligence to really get to terms with or accept the dharma, the teachings. So we need the kind of intelligence also which is not just good at worldly affairs, but is intelligent enough to appreciate the teachings, the Buddhist teachings in this case. They should be diligent. So it's not enough just to have intelligence and open-mindedness. Obviously, we need perseverance, diligence, that opposes laziness, which is a big problem for people like me. Laziness is a big problem, in the sense that there are some things we can do very easily and enjoy doing, but some things like practicing dharma become more difficult. So we need diligence also. Yeah. So these are essential. One reason from a great Indian Buddhist master as to why we need to be unbiased, Bhava Viveka is a great Madhyamaka master. He says in The Heart of the Middle Way, through taking sides, the mind is distressed, whereby you will never know peace. So this is interesting, through taking sides, being biased. We can see how that plays out in the modern world, can't we? The bias that people have. And when it becomes extreme, it is just so terrible, so violent. So taking sides, Tsongkhapa says, is to have attachment for your own religious system, hostility towards others. So important to look at that in your own mind, if it's there, and discard it. Yeah. After giving up your own opinions, assertions, respect and abide in the texts of the master and your abbot. So he's saying, give up this partisanship and be prepared to have some respect, for what you hear from your teacher. What does intelligent mean in this context? He says it's not enough to be non-partisan. You have to know how to discriminate between correct and wrong explanations, correct and counterfeit paths. So you have to have that intelligence that understands what is unproductive, what is productive. So obviously some critical thinking, some intelligence, as the Buddha said, also not just accepting what he says, but checking very carefully. Yeah, like the goldsmith checks gold. So that kind of intelligence needs to be there. And if we are honest, we can see that often we don't apply that. And in the world, sadly, many people are not applying that kind of intelligence, and it's leading to a tremendous amount of problems and very superficial attachments and then conflicts with other people. So then the question is, are these two qualities enough, being non-partisan and intelligent? And Tsongkhapa says no. If you have both of these, if like a drawing of a person who is listening to the teachings, you are inactive, then you are not fit to listen to the teachings. Therefore, you must have great diligence. Yeah. Then if you also have quality of being very focused, respect for the teaching, and to the instructor, then there are a total of 5 qualities. Yeah. These 5 can be reduced to 4. Striving very diligently, focusing the mind well when listening, having great respect for the teachings and the instructor, discarding bad explanations, retaining good explanations. So how to have great respect for the instructor who may not be, a very good instructor? Then one should just think, for the time being, the instructor is a representative of the Buddha and is there sitting on the throne out of respect for the teachings. Yeah. And so this person, for the time being, you regard as the doctor, the person teaching. And this helps in life anyway, doesn't it? To not just to focus on people's negative qualities, but to try and see the good qualities in the people in front of us. That helps us to have better relationship with those people and maybe also extract more benefit from that relationship rather than, think negatively of the person for this or that reason. So these are some of the attributes the student should have. Then there are many other things mentioned here, which are specific to people who do take on a guru. Like, this is worth studying if you have time. There's some very powerful things here. They say a student should be like a dutiful child. You should be like a diamond, very strong in your relationship with the guru. You should be like the earth, meaning willing to take on a lot of responsibility, not become dispirited when the guru gives you lots of responsibilities, some of which will be very difficult for sure. So as one teacher said to someone else, you have met with my Geshe, who is clearly a bodhisattva, and have practiced in accordance with his words. You have great merit. Now let this be a privilege, not a burden. So, when some of us think of our relationship we've had with Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, other great teachers, they were just, they were people who were just so dedicated to others. I mean, I was watching Rinpoche on and off since, in my case, 1979. And then you get a feeling about a person, right? You don't have to be living with them. I mean, once I was living with Rinpoche for 48 hours, and I tell you, it's very strange. Your world gets turned upside down. Your whole idea of when is it time to be awake, when is it time to be asleep, all this gets ruined, When Rinpoche calls you for a puja or a teaching at 1 or 2 a.m., you wonder what's going on, So anyway, you have seen how such people operate, how much they care for others, how much they are willing to teach any time of day or night, how much they are prodding one, how much they are pushing one to go beyond what we think we can do. And so then one feels, let me try and do as much as I can for this great person. They can't do everything themselves, They can't run all their centers themselves. Obviously, their students have to do it. So then you feel, and it's sustained me quite a bit all these years, that, it's like one can't give up on people like Rinpoche. He never gave up on us. So how can we give up on him? We have to help him. And what would make the teacher most happy, of course, is to help sentient beings and to practice the Dharma. And of course, one way to help sentient beings in this organization is through the meditation centers. So then someone has to run the centers, They don't run themselves. So anyway, to assume responsibility and to do what one can. An attitude like Tsongkhapa says, like a worldly servant, which means to perform even the worst tasks in their entirety without wavering. For example, he says the great scholar Atisha had at one point to stay in an area of Tibet with a lot of sewage and mud. And one Geshe Dontompa, one great student, Lama, took off all his clothes and he cleaned up the filth with his own clothes for his teacher and so forth. And he covered the area with dry white earth and even built a stone mandala in front of Atisha. And then Atisha was very happy with him and said, I had somebody like you in India as well. Atisha, when Atisha got sick, Dontompa would carry out his feces with his own hands, clean him and do what had to be done when his teacher was sick. All these things Dontompa did for the great Atisha. And when I look at some of my own Dharma friends who have been students and monks, the way they have served Rinpoche for 40 years, meaning sort of day and night, because as I said, for Rinpoche, day and night is a little bit fused. It's amazing what some of the students have done working for Rinpoche, supporting Rinpoche's work. Extraordinary devotion to the Guru. We should be like a sweeper, meaning eliminating completely all our pride, feelings of superiority. We should consider ourselves lower than the Guru, very much lower than the Guru. The Geshe Dontompa said, the water of good qualities does not collect on the heights of pride. In other words, water goes down into the valleys. It doesn't stay on the mountaintops. So we should be low like the valley, the spirit of the valley. There's something to that effect in the great Tao Te Ching text of the Chinese wisdom tradition. So we should be like the green growth in the valley, not like the mountain peaks in this case. We should be have an attitude like a foundation. Take on even the most heavy responsibilities, most arduous activities of your guru with pleasure. Fifth, we should also be like a dog. A good loyal dog doesn't get angry, even when the master is angry with the dog. A loyal dog does not get angry. So we shouldn't get angry if our guru berates us or pretends to ignore us, gives us a hard time. Or like when Marpa used to beat Milarepa, kick him out of the teaching hall. Milarepa would get very sad, but he never got angry with Marpa. So like that. Somebody was being beaten by their Lama, and somebody else complained, says, this master seems to hate you, He said, no, to me it seems like I'm being blessed by Heruka each time he does this to me. So that's the way for the student to begin to appreciate the guru. Of course, it means that we should find an authentic guru. There's a lot of teachings on that. Dalai Lama says, don't be in a hurry. Don't chase after a guru, he says, like a dog chasing after meat. There's a Tibetan expression, apparently. Spy on your guru, if necessary, for a long time. Don't just follow him or her because they're famous or look good or whatever. Check it out, but then you follow them. And we should also be like a boat, like a ferry. Never to tire of deeds for your guru's sake, no matter how many times you have to engage in your guru's activities. So like this, and then it teaches how to develop faith, and so forth. Yeah. So, and of course, then we have to not examine the guru's faults, but try and see the faults as just a reflection of our own garbage, our own mind. And also to think that, if our guru came in front of us in the body of light, karmically, we wouldn't be able to see it usually, or else it wouldn't be able to really help us at the stage that we're at. Gurus can appear in bodies of light, apparently, but not for people like us, for higher level students, But for us, the guru comes, is able to eat and talk and have food with us, and so on and so forth, and gets sick, gets old and dies, so forth. Anyway, we need to remember the guru's kindness again and again, be respectful, and realize that without this qualified person, there's no chance whatsoever of becoming enlightened. Not only because they give us the instructions based on their own experience, but because, as we said, their main job is to dismantle our pride, our ego, help us develop renunciation. And they, if they're a skillful guru, then they know exactly how to do that in their actions, in their teachings, and everything they do is to help us with that. I remember Rinpoche at Kopan Monastery, the only course I took there with him. We hear teachings on suffering, and Rinpoche was teaching a lot on suffering, so much so that he would forget to give us the pee-pee breaks we needed, and we'd be sitting in the tent holding on to our bladders, and then one day there was a lovely chirping of this bird outside the tent, and like people must have been thinking how nice, And then what does Rinpoche said? He says, listen to that bird outside, sound of suffering. When does this guy stop talking about suffering, But that's the guru's job, to show us, how do we know that the bird is chirping out of great joy? We don't know. That's our projection. If you actually examine birds, what are they doing all the time? Searching for food, being a little restless, and so on and so forth. Sure, they can fly in the sky. That's true. That's kind of nice. But how do we know? And the bird, of course, has no opportunity to understand a word of what the Lama is saying or what Buddha is saying. So yeah, poor bird, it's the sound of suffering. It's true. Anyway, so the guru is not there to say and do things that are pleasing to us all the time. No way. Initially, maybe. If they want to catch some student whom they know will be able to help later, they can be very nice to the student in the beginning. And of course, one should be nice and give offerings and smile. And then, then slowly, when the guru says, Guruji, can I do some work for you? Then the guru, then the guru starts giving work. And then the student realizes, wow, well, was I in my right state of mind when I asked for advice on what to do? So how do we rely on the teacher actually? Respect, material things, offering service to the guru, but the greatest thing, if we can practice the teachings. That's why the guru is on this earth. Help us practice the teachings to become liberated, to become Buddhas, so we can benefit all sentient beings. That's what they want us to do the most, practice the teachings. So if we can do that, that's fantastic. But of course, if the guru needs money and medicine and whatever for their work, and of course, we have to offer those things as well. And as I said, we have to offer service. The guru needs people helping, But the greatest is also to practice. The authentic guru must be so happy when their students are developing real qualities, developing compassion, bodhicitta, insight into emptiness. That makes the guru so happy, Sharawa, who was a very great Kadampa Geshe, said that we use the word guru for whoever is pleased by practice and doesn't give even the slightest consideration for material gifts. So if you find someone who is very interested in always receiving money or gifts or cars from their students, then maybe that's not someone to take as your main guru, They may be able to help you in some way, but, like that. I think this is clear in some ways. This is not the total of what Tsongkhapa is saying, but some of the main points. Of course, there are also cases where we really can't do what the guru wants us to do. And then the famous text, the 50 verses on guru devotion says, if you cannot reasonably do as the guru has instructed, excuse yourself from the guru with good words, soothing words. But of course, it depends. If you have a Vajrayana relationship with your guru, then it's very difficult to say no. But of course, if your guru says go out and kill people, then you would have to say, well, Guruji, I don't know how to kill people in the right way, with compassion and wisdom. So I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. And I don't know of any case actually where, for example, Lama Zopa Rinpoche has asked anyone to engage in anything like that, And even I think Naropa, Tilopa never asked Naropa even to do things like that. He asked him to do very strange things, but not to kill people. Yeah, anyway. How long should we rely on a guru? One Geshe Bodowa says, with each student who comes to me, my burden increases. With each who leaves, it decreases. If you stay apart from the guru, it is not beneficial. Therefore, practice for a long time at a moderate distance. Then it gives a whole list of benefits of relying on the teacher. The main one is you get enlightened quicker. That's the main benefit. Otherwise, as Buddha says again, if we don't rely, then we are in great danger of just becoming like a worm, like a worn animal skin, So to be successful, rely continuously on your teachers, even if they're dead. Then you rely on their instructions that you got from them. Faults of not relying on a teacher. Once when he was asked this, Buddha didn't want to answer. He said, if I give you the answer, it will scare you. The result of not relying on your teacher properly. This is if you've taken a teacher. If you don't have a teacher, then of course, But if you've taken a teacher and then you despise them or don't practice properly and neglect them and just ignore what they've taught, then he said, don't answer. Do not ask this question, Vajrapani, he says. The answer will frighten the world, including the gods. But then he does say, basically the result of that is to be separated from the teachings for unbearable amount of time, and also possibly hellish rebirth. So we should be very careful in not only choosing a guru, but then being very careful to really be very careful to follow the instructions, especially never get angry with the guru, never despise the guru, so on and so forth. This is very important, because it would be like despising and disparaging your own Buddha nature, you see, your own goodness, your own potential for enlightenment, and so on and so forth. So all this is said. The 50 verses on the guru says, you who despise the master, you greatly confused person, will die by poison, demons, infectious disease, leprosy, contagious fever, or other illnesses. Maybe. Who can say? We don't know how karma works. This is one of the most difficult topics. We can't say this is all nonsense. You'll also go to a hell after being killed by a king or a fire, or by poisonous snakes, So be careful. This is also because the guru is even higher than the parents, in the sense of their compassion for us is said to be far greater than any parent for any child, because it's unbiased compassion and love, and it's a love that wants us to become enlightened, wants to help us all the way to enlightenment. So disparaging such a person is karmically much heavier than even harming your parents, which is also very bad, but not as negative as harming or disparaging your guru. Yeah. Then we come to what we're supposed to be speaking about. But anybody have anything to say about this? Also, it'll help give my lazy voice a little rest. Any comment? Especially though, well, yeah, some of you may not have had a guru, so it's harder to kind of understand some of these teachings. It may seem excessive. Nobody? Nicola? Of course, I'll be embarrassed.
Strange things that Tilopa and Narupa, the guru type of relationship, what were the weird strange things that were asked?
Oh, you must read the book. It's amazing. It's like a total adventure story. Well, one of my favorite ones is that, of course, you know how Naropa, let me tell the story. Okay, this is good. Stories are good, you know. Tibetans love telling stories, and it really helped in the mass of teachings when a guru would give, these teachers, Tibetans would give their stories. So anyway, this, first of all, you have to understand, Naropa was a great scholar, okay? Very renowned scholar, teaching at Nalanda, the greatest university of that time, you could say. And in the biography, it says he is sitting with his back to the sun, okay? Which is also a bit symbolic, is turning away from the real light, you know. But he's this great scholar, and he's studying his texts. Then this shadowy figure appears, you know, and he sees this very old, ugly-looking woman, old hag. And she just turns up, you know, doesn't know where the hell she's come from. You know, usually you're supposed to be examined at one of the gates of Nalanda and questioned, you know. You'd only be allowed in if you had a certain amount of knowledge. But this lady just appears, okay? So maybe someone unusual. She says to him, without any kind of showing of great respect or anything for him being this great scholar, just asks him straight, do you understand the words of what you're reading? Because he's reading some text. He says, yes. She said, good, yeah. She's kind of happy with that answer. And she asks him, do you understand the meaning? He says, yes. she gets damn annoyed. She gets really annoyed. She dances a little wrathful dance and gets angry with him and says, you don't understand this. Who do you think you are, And I mean, he's kind of taken aback. No one talks to him like that in Nalanda, let alone some old hag who looks like, some old cleaning lady. And she keeps on saying, you need a proper guru. You need a guru, You need to find Tilopa. And I mean, Naropa is totally, imagine, she has total confidence in what she's saying, blazes with wrath. She's actually a Dakini, a very powerful Dakini, who has come to help him. Maybe, sent by Tilopa or the Buddha, who knows, whatever. But so then he goes out on his search. He finds Tilopa after a long time killing fish on the banks of the Ganga, eating their entrails or whatever, and throwing the fish back in the river. So this is kind of weird, okay? Anyway, to answer Nicola's question, one of the weird things, I think he does 10 or 12 things he asks. One is very nice. So he keeps on, getting Naropa to do these unbearable things, which go against reason. So he says they are going along, master and disciple. There's a wedding party, barat. There's a barat, The bride is going, and then all the bride's people and stuff. So Tilopa says to Naropa, what I want you to do there is go and steal the bride and bring her to me. Yeah. You go and steal the bride, bring her to me. I want her. Okay. He can't refuse, He's dedicated to Tilopa. So he goes there, tries to steal the bride. You get totally beaten up, He gets totally beaten up by the people there. You can't just come in and steal the bride. Come on. And so then they move on. And as with all of these cases, he's lying there moaning and groaning, with pain, because he's been beaten up very badly. And Tilopa comes next and he says, hey, Naropa, what's the matter with you? What's your problem? And then through his great skill and compassion or whatever special powers, he kind of heals Naropa again. And again, then they carry on. And at some point later, they have another adventure where usually Naropa gets beaten up in some way or hurt. At one point, Tilopa tells him to eat kaka. And because he eats it with such devotion, it tastes like nectar. So that was one where he didn't get kind of beaten up. But his devotion showed that, what is for us would be disgusting, for Naropa became nectar. So there's many stories like this. And of course, things like Naropa's own student, Marpa, who was a great master himself, had collected all this gold to give to teachers to request teachings. But he decided he would offer some gold to Naropa when Naropa became a guru, great guru. I'll give some, but I'll keep some gold for myself for, another occasion. And Naropa knew that Marpa was holding back some of his gold dust. He said, who are you trying to kid, Give me all the gold you have. So Marpa had to give him all the gold. And when he gave him the gold, he threw it in the air. He said, what need have I of gold? For me, the whole world is gold, Naropa said. So poor Marpa, who had been, spending how many years collecting gold to offer to the guru. But maybe that teaching was mind-blowing enough to be worth it, when Naropa threw everything in the air. But anyway, Naropa's story, Naropa's life is very well worth reading because it can be read on many levels, but it shows the quality of devotion you need to become enlightened quickly, which is what these people wanted to be. They had such renunciation and compassion. And this old hag at Nalanda knew that Naropa had a lot of incredible qualities, but he needed a nudge, and that staying as a great scholar at Nalanda wasn't going to do it for him. He's becoming a little bit complacent and, thinking he knew the meaning. Of course, he would have known the meaning, but that kind of meaning that Tilopa was able to give Naropa, that, nobody would be able to give from books. So Tilopa totally opened up, you could say, Naropa's mind, totally opened his mind into the nature of reality and so forth. And so, please read that. All those books, Life of Milarepa, Life of Marpa, Life of Naropa, and then Life of Tilopa, all these great Kagyu masters from Tilopa down. Tilopa, Naropa. Tilopa was 9th, 10th century through to Milarepa, 11th century. All those stories are amazing, amazing. They can make us full of some kind of devotion, at least for a little while. And as I mentioned about Marpa's, how much devotion, how much respect he had for India and for Indian masters. It's very touching, it's very moving, it's very inspiring. Yeah. And the teachers do say that one way, when one lacks inspiration, sometimes, too many teachings or lists of things, you get bored with teachings, read the lives of the great masters. One can get a lot of inspiration from that, because they were just so amazing. It's like when I think of some of the things Rinpoche did and the way he operated, it's just very inspiring. Very inspiring. The way he went shopping, the way he would shop in malls, never for stuff for himself, but for his students. He would be there wondering and then making little divinations, who needs this, who would really benefit from this. So, he would buy things from suitcases to teddy bears for people who he felt would benefit from those things. And of course, the people who received them was very happy. And he usually knew exactly what people needed, obviously. He had that clairvoyance. So whether you're going shopping with Rinpoche or listening to a teaching or just walking with him, it was could be very inspiring. Very tiring as well. We were in Nasik one time with Rinpoche, and he was having us up very late. And of course, he knew the timing was right. He brought us back on a road which had a lot of dead dogs on it, so we could stop 4 or 5 times to get out and bless these poor dead dogs on the highway between Nasik and Mumbai. And Rinpoche would pray for them and spit on them and all sorts of things. And then, of course, we arrived in Mumbai as the terror strike started that year. What year was it? 2016? Anyway, that time. We arrived just as the terror strike was starting. So, impeccable timing. So then we sat and did prayers for the people, and because it had just started an hour or so before we arrived, the terror attack. So we sat in one of the students' houses watching television and doing the prayers that Rinpoche was instructing us to do. And I'm sure he knew exactly when was the right time to arrive in Mumbai, and start doing prayers. Anyway, so if one can find an authentic guru, it's something very special. Yeah. So one should be relying on the guru. We're not going to get to meditation today, I think, the meditation session. But I will quote what Tsongkhapa says at one point during that, and we'll look more at it later. I'll quote him. I'll quote the translation directly. And Nicola is going through some of these points in the morning, because he's teaching the 7-limb practice, for example, which is important to generate positive energy and purify the mind before a meditation session. So that can be done when people get serious about meditation. You can experiment with that. But listen to what Tsongkhapa says about meditation in brief at one point. When he talks about the actual session, he says, that which is known as meditation is the act of sustaining an object of meditation by repeatedly focusing your mind upon a virtuous object of meditation. And why are we doing this? The purpose of this is as follows. From beginningless time, you have been under the control of your mind. Your mind has not been under your control. Yeah. You have been under the control of your mind. Your mind has not been under your control. So furthermore, your mind always tended to be obscured by afflictive emotions and so forth. Thus, meditation aims to bring this mind, which gives rise to all these faults, under control, and it aims to make it serviceable. Serviceability means you can direct your mind as you wish towards a virtuous object of meditation. So clear. So it's not just to go, the om or something, or empty the mind, or just watch the breath. That's important. But the main point is to have a virtuous object, ultimately, great compassion, bodhicitta, emptiness, reality, and be able to keep the mind there. That's what he meant by serviceability. Your mind doesn't go all over the place like a candle flickering in the wind. It has to be made able to stay on the object for hours on end, if necessary, without moving. Just staying on that virtuous object. Virtuous object is that which is going to lead you to more and more happiness and, positive rebirths and finally to enlightenment, So that's what meditation is. And then, of course, he goes into detail about the different kinds of meditation. And one kind, which we'll look at again and again, and which Nikoji is teaching in the mornings, is analytical meditation, where we realize that by looking at a topic from different angles and reflecting on it in a thorough and meaningful way can, bring out certain things that are not going to come about simply by thinking about it superficially, or thinking that if I master my breath and can be peaceful with my breath, that's going to help me understand things very deeply, say death or suffering and so forth. It's not. We have to do analytical meditation on death, on suffering, on karma, on precious human life, and all these topics to really, he's saying, understand them in our guts. So analytical meditation. And Dalai Lama Ji is always, in some of his books also, so clear about this. He says one of the prime strengths of the Mahayana tradition, as it's come to us from the Nalanda tradition, is analytical meditation and using reasoning and logic. So that then, he said, even if, using that, if you find that some of the Buddha's teachings don't make any sense at all and are not at all logical and so forth, then they should be discarded. Says that's the greatness and the courage of the Indian masters. They took the Buddha's words to heart, to check the teachings very carefully. If something is there which just doesn't make any sense, cannot be, spoken about meaningfully using logic and so forth, then those teachers would question it deeply and even say, no, not going to accept this, at least not yet. Especially some things also that have come in the cosmology teachings on the nature of the universe. Some of that maybe been proven to be not so correct by modern science. So those things should be, rejected. I remember one monk in our organization becoming quite upset when he heard the Dalai Lama say that something that I think Vasubandhu, one of the great scholars, had said about the universe was nonsense. We should just say it's like nonsense. And this monk who, greatly, sticking to being very respectful of all of the Indian masters and their teachings. He was a bit distressed when Dalai Lama said that, some of it is nonsense. Because Dalai Lama has to speak to a wide variety of people. He can't be seen to be rigid and opinionated and to be going totally against modern science or scientific discoveries. Anyway, there's some weird things in the Buddhist texts, obviously, about people who didn't have the ability to really know some things about the universe. Of course, many, many Tibetans, lamas and all, until recently might have felt that the world is flat and so forth. Those kind of things might have been there. So, analytical meditation. Example for a beginner, just a very simple example. We're taught to not generate anger against someone who behaves badly towards us. Yeah. And not only that, but if possible, begin to see that person as your teacher, the person who's giving you a hard time, and especially a person you have helped. And then they, in return, they act badly. Not only do you not get angry, but you regard them as your teacher. So, you can do as much meditation on your breath as you want, and it will make you temporarily calm. But then when you think about that person, when you meet that person, you'll get angry again, because what they've done for you is terrible. Now, when you begin to analyze why we not need get angry, and why we could even look at them as a guru, you see, that is going to require some thinking, right? Some analysis. It's not coming automatically. So then we can go into many things. Why is that person behaving that way? Okay. You say, okay, they're a sentient being. They suffer. They have delusions. They're like the slave of their negative minds temporarily. They have the Buddha nature, so they're not inherently bad. All these things. Then why see them as your guru? Well, you want to develop patience? Yeah. So who's going to teach you patience? Somebody who's always nice to you? No. Someone who gives you a hard time, right? So you begin to analyze how this person whom you think is terrible, actually they're being very kind to you. Because your best friend may never be so kind to you. They'll always be nice to you, and you'll never have to generate any kind of forbearance or great inner fortitude, because they're always being nice to you, So we become very soft, complacent, and maybe even forget Buddha's teachings on suffering. We might think life is really one very nice pleasure ground. All these people are so nice. So then we need someone who is not nice. Yeah, does that make sense? But it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but this is analytical meditation. You're analyzing, you're using reasoning, logic. All these things are logical. We're not making unreasonable statements. And we put them together, and then it makes some sense. And you think, yeah, okay, I can begin to see how that person is also a suffering person who doesn't always get what they want, might get sick, are definitely going to die, and how sad that they are behaving so badly. That's not going to help them. According to law of karma, it's not going to help them. It's going to more suffering for them. So even one Lama uses this logic. One great Indian scholar, Shantideva, says, because of me, because of my being in the world, this person is getting angry, behaving badly, creating the cause for their own pain, their suffering. And because of that person, my attitude is helping me to see that person as a guru, as my patience guru. They are benefiting me. So actually, I'm harming them. They are benefiting me. Yeah, it makes perfect sense if you look at the logic. But of course, we don't see it that way, because I helped them and now they're harming me and, poor me. That kind of logic is not helping us. But that's the analysis we usually do. Or, so our worldly analysis is actually harming us spiritually. And the other kind of analysis is helping us and helping the other person, because at least we don't respond with anger. And if we respond with compassion and skill, we might even be able to help that person and so forth. So analytical meditation, yeah, sounds like it could be something very powerful. So rather than just be afraid of death, we can begin to understand it more and use it to increase our spiritual energy. All these things can be used. All need to be analyzed. But then when they're analyzed, we also then stop and focus on the kind of the conclusion or the feeling we have. Analysis also does need to come to an end. So we can then do what is called placement meditation and just focus on the kind of understanding we have generated. So it becomes firmer in our mind. So Tsongkhapa will be talking about all of these things and some of the misconceptions that can arise. Because some people, yeah, think meditation is just to empty your mind. That's a very common misunderstanding. Because it feels good. It might be feels wonderful to be free of all these wandering thoughts, and to become even very blissful. But as one great figure, Western figure from the 60s, Ram Dass, who was an American who came to India, had one particular Indian guru, as he said, and he had many blissful experiences in India. But then he also wrote later, if you think you're enlightened, just go home and look after your parents. That'll really be the test of how enlightened you are, having to look after your parents, who don't think of you as an enlightened person. They just think of you as your son or daughter, who's supposed to do this or that or whatever, Just because you've been in India meditating and having blissful experiences doesn't mean much to your parents, Anyway, if you have to help them and don't have time to meditate, then they will be your guru. Your parents will teach you something. Yeah. So analytical meditation stops us just going into some kind of bliss. One person who was teaching at one of our centers in India, he was very honest. He said, I only discovered recently how, through meeting a very qualified teacher, I only now realize how most of the meditation I was doing was wrong. It was just leading me to think that a state of calm and bliss was enough, because he had this ability to go into very calm states and so forth. But from the point of view of many Tibetan Buddhist masters, if we do too much of that in the wrong way, with the wrong motivation, it just creates animal karma. In the sense, we just become a little bit dumbed down, Doesn't increase the intelligence or the sharpness or the wisdom. It just makes us kind of a little bit zombie-like. But it feels good. Kind of feels good not to have any disturbing thoughts at that point. So we have to be very careful with meditation. If we engage in certain kind of meditation a lot, it can lead to what is called a certain kind of rebirth in a God realm, where it might sound very good because you're in a blissful state of meditation for a long, long time, but no merit is being created, no compassion, no wisdom realizing emptiness in the mind stream of that God who is meditating. And when the karma runs out, they go down. It's said to be very, very disturbing and suffering for those gods, because they do have certain clairvoyances and powers. They can see when they're about to die, and it's very distressing for them. And because they've been in this blissful state for eons sometimes, and they also see where they're going to be reborn. And it's awful for them. It's awful. Imagine knowing you're going to be reborn in some lower realm where there's no bliss anymore that you've been having for eons. So, yeah, we have to be careful to balance our meditation and get proper instructions. And as the Dalai Lama says, if we don't have a guru yet, that's fine. He said to that person, don't chase after a guru like a dog chasing after meat. Your guru for now is authentic literature and your own intelligence. I think that's a great answer. Because, okay, the teachings that say you need a guru. Yeah, but, everything to be done properly, at the right time, at the right speed, you don't run into it. And right now, you have to rely on something. So rely on authentic books by authentic masters and your own intelligence, your own discriminating wisdom, which we all have some degree of. So luckily, we have a lot of good literature around and amazing commentaries on these. This is the root text, which is very dense, but also there are huge commentaries on this text of Tsongkhapa. We should read authentic literature and think about it. And it can be very, 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 I would say, empowering to read authentic teachers giving very skillful instructions. It is very amazing. Not always easy, because some of the topics are quite difficult, but somehow you feel you're in the presence of someone who really wants to explain something to you very thoroughly and has those qualities of the Mahayana master, one of which is having tremendous compassion towards the students, right? So caring a lot more for the students than for themselves. Yeah. Remember that story of the attendant who was so upset when the students were not giving enough respect to his teacher, despite his teacher giving so many teachings. And the teacher said to him, look, when I teach, what I see in front of me are suffering sentient beings. I just want to help them. I don't need their thanks, So the authentic Mahayana guru, and there are gurus like that who have written, instructions, texts, commentaries. Reading that, you get that sense that they care a lot for us and want to give as deep and extensive an explanation as possible. They're not in a hurry with the subject matter. And that's something really unusual nowadays. If you look at the modern so-called gurus, I won't name any names, they're into giving very kind of clever, glib answers to questions. They don't go into anything very deeply. It's like a performance. It's just like a performance, a show. Spirituality is entertainment almost. And the authentic Mahayana gurus are not like that. It's very thorough, like a good doctor, giving very thorough instructions, very meaningful medicine. Sorry, I went on and on. Any comments, please? Oh, excuse me. Hi. Sometimes when I pick up these kind of texts, I've had this experience that, Kabir, why don't you read these texts every day of your life? Why do you miss out on a day? They're so amazing. I don't have an adequate answer. All I can say is, well, I'm distracted, I'm lazy. But it's so something about, the teacher, something about the author, their authentic spiritual power, their aspirations, their bodhicitta. That's what makes their words so powerful. Not for everybody, of course, but if one has some connection, it makes it very, very powerful. It doesn't read to me just like, someone putting together information. It's like, a brilliant mind at work, of course. Tsongkhapa, to do what he did in his life and to produce this and all the teachings he gave and the 3.5 million prostrations he performed. This guy is non-stop Dharma machine. A bit dispiriting sometimes, because one feels, was he human, I can't do that, but slowly, possibly. Anything from people here? The people online today are very quiet. No, that's good. There's a lot of dedications we should dedicate for Sujit and his brother, who may soon undergo kidney transplant. Then there are some people who have died recently, including one Ricky Sharma. By all accounts, a very wonderful, promising young man who was hoping to do a lot of work, helping especially youth in India. He passed away in a car accident in Rajasthan last month. So pray for his, may he connect with a human life and be able to continue his compassionate work and so forth. Meet with the Dharma. May all of us be well and happy. If we are aspiring to find a guru in this life, may we at some point find a teacher and be able to follow them as best we can. And if we don't have a guru, may we find the right literature and investigate it with intelligence, critical thinking, and so forth, and, lack of bias, and with diligence. May we not be dispirited. May we not give up. May we see clearly, I would say, may we see clearly the extent of the challenge facing human beings at this point in human history. And may we do what we can to alleviate the distress that is there. And if we are that kind of person with the knowledge and the ability, may we organize in a way that has a powerful effect on at least some groups of people. If we're in education, may we strongly affect young minds to go in the direction of harmony, cooperation, helping one another, emotional intelligence, and so forth, so that younger generation doesn't perpetuate all the mistakes of previous generations and understands interdependence, interconnectedness quite deeply, so that we don't make a mess of further mess of our planet and so forth. May all of our authentic gurus have long and healthy lives. May all their wishes be fulfilled. May Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche reincarnate very soon as a teacher and continue to guide students, old students as well as new students, in a fresh new body. May all the sanghas be in harmony. May all the centers receive the support they need. Financial and material, and in terms of teachers. Especially may Tushita Delhi be more and more beneficial for sentient beings, just as our gurus have wished for this center for the last many years, 40 plus years. And we could also dedicate that we develop more and more genuine interest in the Lamrim tradition, this graduated path tradition of the great Atisha, carried on by Lama Tsongkhapa and others. May we cherish it, and may it help us on the path to enlightenment. And as Dalai Lama said once, at the very least, what we can do is remember the kindness of mother sentient beings and try to see all phenomena as like a dream. See phenomena as dreamlike, and remember the kindness of sentient beings. Okay, thank you all very much for your patience, people online, and the people here at Tushita. Today at Tushita, outnumbering the people online, so very happy. Thank you, Pradeep ji. Hope you are well. And Alexis from maybe, I don't know, Alexis Napoli, maybe from Naples, from Italy. And Manjari ji, Shushmita, Apurva, thank you all very much. Take care.